When multiplying complex numbers, as bad as we want to say negative 2 times negative 5 is positive 10, we can't do that, and here's why. If I have square root of negative 2 alone, well, remember the rule of thumb that we're doing here. Anytime I have square root of negative, throw an I on it and move on. Anytime I have square root of negative, throw an I on it and move on. What I have here now is, when I have I times I, get an I squared root 2 times 5. Now that they're positive, I can multiply them, but let's look at this I squared here for a minute. Remember that I in itself we defined as the square root of negative 1. Meaning, if I square it, what I do to one side, I do to the other. But remember what a square does. A square cancels out a square root. And it's not that I have a negative base. My base is the square root. All that square is going to do is cancel out. I squared is going to be negative 1. And that's something very important. I itself is the square root of negative 1. I squared is the value of negative 1. Meaning, I squared really means negative 1 times square root of 10, meaning negative root 10. To see this in another light, square root of negative 4 times square root of negative 25. As bad as I want to multiply those two, when I multiply, when I look at that alone, I end up with 2i. Now notice the difference between these two is, here the 2 is stuck underneath, here it's out front, because the 4 broke down, the 2 did not. And it's the same thing here. Square root of 25 ends up giving me 5i. Well, if I have 2i times 5i, I get 10i squared, just like if I have 2x times 5x. But remember what I squared is? Negative 1. 10 times negative 1 is negative 10. One more, just kind of go full circle here. Negative 3i times 8i. Let's just cut to the chase. When I multiply those, the negative times the positive is a negative 24 I squared. But remember, I squared is negative 1. Negative 24 times negative 1 is a positive 24. So let's kind of look at what's going on here. When I have a positive, it becomes negative. When I have a negative, it becomes positive. What it does is it takes the opposite. It changes the sign when I have an I squared. That's what we want to think, because multiplied by negative 1 changes the sign. So that's what I squared is changing the sign.